I survived a movie theater attack. The whole country was in shock. This episode is about an event that took place during the premiere of The Dark Knight Rises in a suburb of Denver, USA. The author of this thread, one of the survivors of this tragedy, wished to remain anonymous, but agreed to provide information about her identity to the community moderators. I survived a mass shooting in a movie theater. It was the most extreme and life-threatening situation I had ever been in. The story you are about to read is 100% true and happened to me. To give you some context, this occurred in the summer of 2012 in the United States. My boyfriend and I, who had been together for a long time, had recently gotten married. Even though we were poor college students living in a tiny apartment, we knew how to have a good time. That summer, almost every weekend, we would go to our local movie theater with friends. It was just a few minutes walk from our apartment, and the tickets were very cheap. Spending an evening for less than $10 was something we could afford. One Thursday evening, our friends called and invited us to the midnight premiere of the new Batman movie. I had just finished a 12-hour shift and was exhausted. I wanted to decline and just crash in my apartment. But I didn't want to miss the fun, especially since I had been looking forward to this movie for a long time. I figured I'd just go to bed later than usual and lose a couple of hours of sleep. What's the big deal? We met at the theater at 10:30 p.m. The ticket booth was to the right of the entrance, and right above it was an electronic board displaying the show times. The midnight screening of The Dark Knight Rises was highlighted in bright red letters. Worried that tickets would sell out quickly, one of our friends had gone ahead and bought tickets for all of us. So we skipped the line at the box office and went straight to the ticket checker. The girl smiled at us and politely pointed us toward Theater 9, which was to the right of the lobby. If only I had known what I know now, known that among the crowd, a killer was hiding, that as I walked across that red and purple carpet toward Theater 9, I might have been walking straight to my death. I think about this often now, what I would have done if I had known the truth. Would I have pulled the fire alarm? Called the police? Shouted for people to run away? But of course, I had no way of knowing. Completely unaware of the danger I was walking into, I pushed open the door to Theater 9 without hesitation. The hallway leading to this theater was U-shaped, with entrances on both the left and right sides. Theater 9 was the biggest in the entire complex, perfect for accommodating the crowd gathered for the midnight premiere. The screen was gray, the trailers hadn't started yet, and there was still an hour and a half before the movie began. We entered from the right side, so all the rows of seats were to our left. I remember being surprised at how full the theater already was. Almost every seat was taken, and that wasn't great news for us. It seemed like we wouldn't be able to sit together. The theater had a section of 5 rows of seats right in front of the screen. Many of those seats were empty, but sitting right in front of the screen is awful, and none of us wanted that. Then one of our friends spotted a row with 5 empty seats in a row, exactly what we needed. These seats were 3 or 4 rows above floor level, where the incline of the theater seating began. We hurried up the stairs before someone else could take them and sat down. My husband Brock took seat 5, I sat next to him, and my friend Samantha sat to my right. Her boyfriend Tommy took the seat next to her, and our friend Leo sat on the aisle. For the next few minutes, we chatted, joked, and laughed. After a while, 3 of our friends went to the lobby to get drinks and that ridiculously tasty movie theater popcorn. While they were gone, Brock and I passed the time people watching. The theater was brightly lit since the lights hadn't dimmed yet, and I could clearly see everyone around me. Many people were wearing Batman-themed t-shirts and hoodies. Some even had masks and capes attached to their shirts. There were a lot of kids in the audience, which wasn't surprising. Even though it was a Thursday night, it was summer break, so there was no school the next day. Of all the people I saw, I will never forget the little girl sitting a few seats away from us in our row. She was adorable, blonde hair, blue eyes. She walked past us a few times, heading to the lobby, and each time she returned with different snacks and popcorn. Overall, the atmosphere in the theater was lively. People were excited for the movie, laughing and chatting. After what felt like an eternity, the lights finally started dimming, and the trailers began. As with any movie, there was a short animated clip reminding us that we could buy snacks in the lobby. We were already devouring our popcorn like hungry animals. It also reminded us to turn off our phones and be aware of the emergency exits. The clip featured an ugly CGI cat in a tuxedo, sitting in a movie theater. I glanced at the bright green emergency exit signs on either side of the screen, but as usual, I didn't pay much attention to them. Of all the trailers, I only remember one, for Man of Steel. The rest have faded from my memory. When a movie started, the theater erupted in cheers and applause. The title The Dark Knight Rises appeared on the screen. The next scene, Bane hijacks a plane. I thought it was really cool, and it immediately grabbed my full attention. Only when the movie slowed down a bit did I remember how exhausted I was. I decided to close my eyes during the boring scenes to rest a little. By that point, I had been awake for 20 hours, so it made sense that I was feeling drowsy. My eyes were closed for most of the scenes with Batman and Catwoman. I barely remember what happened. Maybe some of you have seen the movie and know what I mean. When I opened my eyes again, Bruce Wayne was sitting at a computer, looking up information on Catwoman. That was the last scene I saw. I never got to finish the movie. Suddenly, there was a loud pop from the left side of the theater. I screamed. The sound caught me completely off guard. Then, a strange smell began spreading through the theater. It smelled like fireworks. At first, I thought someone had thrown a firecracker or something similar. Maybe someone was playing a prank and tossed a firework into the crowd. But then I saw a dark silhouette at the right edge of the screen. It was just a black figure against the bright movie screen. There were flashes of light coming from it. At that moment, everything seemed to slow down, and all sound disappeared. I froze, completely paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't even think. It was like my brain had completely shut off. Brock immediately understood what was happening. He grabbed me, pulled me to the floor, and covered me with his body to shield me. At that moment, time and sound came rushing back. I heard gunshots echoing through the theater. People were screaming. The movie was still playing, creating a horrifying chaos of different sounds. I realized the flashes of light I had seen weren't fireworks. They were gunshots. A surge of adrenaline flooded my body. There was nothing I could do except lie there and pray that the bullets tearing through seats and walls wouldn't hit me. Then, suddenly, everything went silent. Tommy screamed, "Run!" We bolted. We ran down the stairs, crossed the space in front of the screen, and headed toward the bright green exit sign. A crowd of us squeezed into a small, closet-like space near the door. It was impossible to see anything in the darkness. Panicked, we banged on the walls, screamed, and desperately tried to find the way out, blinded by tear gas and overwhelmed by shock. And then, finally, my hands found a metal door handle. I pushed it with all my strength. The door burst open with a loud bang, and the light from the nearest street lamp hit our eyes. We had pushed so hard against the door that we all tumbled out onto the concrete. Samantha lost her pink flip-flops right at the exit. As I scrambled to my feet and literally bolted for my life, I noticed that my legs were red. They were completely soaked in blood. It looked as if I had dipped them into a damn bloodbath. I started checking myself, trying to figure out if I was injured, but I couldn't find a single scratch. Where was all this blood coming from? I turned around and saw it was my husband's blood. He had been shot in the leg. A huge hole gaped in the lower part of his right leg. His foot was barely hanging on, lifelessly swinging from side to side. Leo and some young man I didn't recognize were supporting Brock because, after collapsing at the exit, he had no strength left and couldn't walk anymore. I was in complete shock. I hadn't even realized he was wounded, especially since he had been right behind me the entire time and somehow managed to get out of the theater on his own. To this day, I still don't know how he did it on one leg. And then, I screamed. My scream was so loud that the construction workers on a nearby site heard it. Behind the theater, there was a narrow parking lot, then a grassy area, and beyond that, a road. Work was being done on that road. As soon as the workers heard my scream and saw us running, they froze, stopping their work. I don't know why this particular moment stands out so clearly in my memory. We kept carrying Brock along the back sidewalk until we reached the corner of the building. It was quite a distance, about 10 meters or so. At some point, my husband collapsed from exhaustion and pain, saying he couldn't move anymore. He lay down on the ground, and a pool of blood immediately began spreading beneath him. I turned around and saw a trail of blood stretching from the door to where we were now. I was shaking all over. I dropped to my knees next to Brock and looked around, trying to see who else was injured. Tommy had been shot in the knee and thigh. He was lying further away in the parking lot. The guy who had helped my husband was also wounded. His father and mother were beside him. His mom was sitting against the wall, looking as if she was about to pass out. Blood was seeping from multiple wounds on her body. Their family had run out of the theater at the same time as we did. I think they also heard the gunfire stop and decided to make a run for it. We were all extremely lucky because the shooting inside the auditorium was still going on. I took off my shirt and used it to stop Brock's bleeding. I will never forget how lifeless and limp his leg felt. It made me think that this must be what a dead body feels like. My skin was covered in blood, my hands, my forearms. The police arrived incredibly fast. We had only been outside for a minute or two when the night was suddenly pierced by flashing red and blue lights racing toward us. The police station was literally 1 block from the theater. Until the paramedics arrived, which took an excruciatingly long time, a female officer stayed with us. Brock was one of the last people taken to the hospital. He had been bleeding out for almost 20 minutes before an ambulance finally turned onto the same road where the construction work was happening. By then, he was nearly unconscious. A few strong men with a stretcher ran across the grass, loaded him up, and rushed him back to the ambulance. I couldn't go with him. There was another injured person inside, and there simply wasn't any space left. I was left alone, wandering near the front of the theater, unsure where my friends had gone. My blood-soaked shirt and a massive pool of blood remained on the corner of the sidewalk. Walking through the crowd, I felt like I was in a dream. I couldn't believe what had just happened. People were in hysterics, some were crying. Many, like me, were covered in blood. And most likely, just like in my case, it wasn't their own. Many people noticed that I was standing there alone, lost, and tried to comfort me. They offered me rides to different hospitals to help me find Brock, because no one had told me where he had been taken. I stayed with these people while the police swarmed the entire area, questioning us about what had happened inside the auditorium. The whole parking lot was blocked off, and they weren't letting anyone leave anytime soon. It was around 2 a.m., pitch dark, and I was freezing, wearing only a tank top and shorts. It felt like hundreds of red and blue lights from police cars were flashing all around me. At some point, a large van pulled up with Criminal Investigations Division, or something like that written on the side. That was when reality truly hit me. I felt nausea rising in my throat, and I barely managed not to throw up. Eventually, the police started letting people go. I jumped into my pickup truck and just sped away. I was so panicked that I didn't even think to go back to my apartment to grab my phone, which I'd left there, or to call my parents, or anyone, really, for help. I was angry, terrified, shattered, but most of all, I was in complete shock. Could I really have lost Brock just a month before our first wedding anniversary? All because of some psycho with a gun? Thankfully, by morning, I finally found the hospital where they had taken him. It was in a neighboring city, about 45 minutes away from the theater. I was beyond relieved to get there. The hospital staff was incredibly kind, understanding, and compassionate. They checked to make sure I wasn't injured and allowed me to wait in the ICU, where Brock would be transferred after his surgery. I was just so happy that he was alive. Both Brock and Tommy survived, but many others weren't so lucky. The next day, after getting some much-needed sleep on a hospital couch, I learned that 12 people had died in the shooting, and over 70 had been injured. At first, reports had said 15 people were dead, but the final number was 12. That blonde girl who had been sitting in my row, she didn't make it. She had been just a few steps away from us. She suffered multiple gunshot wounds. A devastated police officer, who would later break down crying while testifying in court, had tried to save her. He carried her out of the theater in his arms and got her to the hospital, but it was too late. Tommy had been taken to a different hospital in the back of a police car. He underwent surgery and made a full recovery. The bullet had narrowly missed his pelvic bone and had come dangerously close to hitting his bladder and urethra. According to the surgeons, my husband lost almost half of his total blood supply. Brock made it to the hospital just in time. If they had gotten him there even a little later, he would have died. He received multiple blood transfusions and spent 3 weeks in the hospital. His leg was so severely damaged that, despite their best efforts, the doctors couldn't save it, and he ultimately had to have it amputated. It's been many years since that night. My husband, my friends, and my family have all, to some extent, healed from what happened. It was a horrific experience that left deep scars, both physical and emotional. But I wouldn't even call that the truly terrifying part of the story. No, the scariest part was the shooter himself. Later, I learned a lot about him during the trial, which went on for years. Even though my encounter with him lasted only a brief moment, it changed my life forever. The realization that people like him exist, that is what's truly terrifying. He was, without a doubt, one of the sickest and most evil people in the world. I learned everything when I watched the trial broadcast on TV in early 2015. This guy had been studying to be a neuroscientist or something like that in California. He seemed like a pretty intelligent guy, but for some reason, he became obsessed with killing people and had an unhealthy fixation on stalking. After dropping out of school, he moved to my state and specifically chose our theater to carry out his mass shooting. Before that, he had planned to hide along remote hiking trails in the mountains, ambush random people, drag them into the woods, and kill them there. But he never followed through with that plan. Instead, he spent months stalking our theater, carefully preparing for the attack that took place on the night of July 20th. Even though I had never seen him before, it makes my skin crawl to think that this man could have been watching us every time we went to the theater, and we never even suspected it. We had no idea what he was planning against us. That event completely shattered my sense of security, because now I always wonder what's going through the mind of the person sitting next to me. I was terrifyingly close to the shooter, but I never saw his face in real life until I was forced to testify in court. Of course, I had seen his photos on TV, but in the theater, he was just a dark silhouette in the shadows, a demonic figure ripped straight from the most terrifying nightmares. And he was in the very hallway we ran through to escape. The only reason we survived that night was that his assault rifle jammed. While preparing for this attack, he had ordered thousands of rounds of ammunition, body armor, a gas mask, tear gas, an assault rifle, and a shotgun. During the trial, they showed the photos he had taken before the attack. He was dressed in gear as if these were his personal trophies. He held his weapon in his hands and grinned ominously. The guy dyed his hair orange, put in black contact lenses, and made demonic grimaces in front of the camera. Just looking at these pictures makes me feel sick. Before heading to the theater, he rigged his apartment with explosives. If anyone had opened the door, it would have detonated. At the theater, he pretended to be a regular moviegoer, even buying a ticket for the film. I think his ticket was for Theater 8, which was nearby, but he chose to enter Theater 9 because there were more people inside. He sat somewhere in the front rows. Most likely, I passed by him several times in the lobby while he was there. Maybe he even saw me. At some point during the screening, he got up and left through the emergency exit, not knowing why the alarm didn't go off. He propped the door open with something, then went to his car to put on armor and grab his weapons. After that, he returned to the theater and started shooting. As we ran out of the theater, we passed right by his white car, parked near the exit. We didn't even notice it. Later, he also walked outside and most likely saw us. I don't know what stopped him from shooting people outside. He could have easily finished us off right there. I think the hardest part for me was facing this freak in court. I will never forget the moment my name was called. I stood up and walked down the center aisle past my family, other survivors, and a crowd of sensation-hungry journalists. I sat directly across from him, just a few feet away. His orange hair was gone. He no longer wore black lenses, but I still felt incredibly uneasy sitting near him. That encounter is something I will never forget. Now I can say that I have looked into the face of a true, deranged psychopath. His gaze was empty and indifferent the entire time. If the eyes truly are the window to the soul, then his soul was filled with nothing but cold apathy toward those he killed and injured. He didn't even look at me. That was only the second time I was consciously in the same room as him. The person who tried to take my life, but thankfully failed. The person who would ultimately spend the rest of his days behind bars. He was sentenced to 3,318 years in prison for his crimes. And here are a few words I have for the man who tried to kill me. The man who caused my endless nightmares and fueled my paranoia. The man who crippled my friends and family. Who condemned my husband to years of suffering because he will never walk the same way again. The man who stole the innocence and joy from a 6-year-old child who never made it out of that theater. The man who committed the deadliest mass shooting in Colorado history. I hope we never meet again. Never. I hope you rot in prison. Edited. I forgot to mention that Leo, Samantha, and I made it out without injuries. No, I won't reveal my identity for obvious reasons. I provided evidence to the moderators, but I don't feel the need to share that information with everyone. I have photos of my husband's wound, but I probably won't post them here out of respect for his privacy and because they are too disturbing. How is Brock doing now? How about you? Did you end up going to therapy? Brock is doing great. He has a prosthetic leg, so he can do almost everything he used to. The only thing is, he can't run as well as before, and he can't play football like he did in high school. We actually never went to therapy. I think we had enough support from each other and our friends to cope with the trauma. Brock is absolutely amazing. He jumped in and shielded you. That's so touching. You're really lucky to have him. I think so too. He's a real hero, LOL. He literally saved my life. I'm not sure I'd be alive today if he hadn't been there with me. That picture of him with black eyes was terrifying. Your story really moved me. I can't even imagine the horror you all went through. Thank you for sharing. You told a really gripping and powerful story. If anyone wanted to know what the shooter looked like with his black lenses here, are you satisfied with the sentence? I was hoping he'd get the death penalty. I was too. For a while, I was really disappointed and even felt like the court betrayed me, if that makes any sense. But I felt better when the judge gave his final statement and said something like, "My intention is that this man will never live among ordinary people again." You could see how much he despised him. I'm just glad he'll never be able to hurt anyone again. God, that was tough to read. I'm so glad you all made it out and are still together. Do you still keep in touch with other survivors? We kept in touch for a while after it happened, but now that life has gone back to normal, I don't really talk to anyone from that time anymore. A woman who was in the same row as my husband messaged me for a while. She's an incredible person. She served in Afghanistan, never got injured there, and then came home and got shot in a movie theater. We also ran into the teenager who helped my husband that night. I think he was about 15 years old at the time. I still admire him. He was such a brave and selfless young man.